Welcome to another installment of Epitomic Entrepreneurs brought to you by MoneyWeb. This morning I'm sitting here with Mark Sham, founder of Suits and Sneakers. Thanks for joining us today. You've been in the spotlight a lot lately with regards to your events and everything. Do you want to just give us a background to who you are as a person, your Suits and Sneakers events, and Impello as your hub?
Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Suits and Sneakers is something that I started about 18 months ago. Before that, I am really a serial entrepreneur. I thought it was cool to act like Richard Branson in my 20s and try to start everything up. The caveat to that is that you're not supposed to start it all up at the same time. You're supposed to make money from something first and then start up. So my 20s were an interesting ride. I did make a little bit of money, but really I learned a lot by starting tons of different businesses across various industries. The one thing that happened to me about 6-7 years ago is I got into public speaking by accident, which is a long story, but the short version of it is that I was looking around to find someone who could help me put together a social media course, because I could kind of just see that it was going to become something that businesses wanted to use. So I looked around for someone to help me put together some course material, couldn't find anybody, and at my dad's urging, decided to go ahead and do it myself. I wasn't really trying to become a public speaker, I was trying to solve a need. But as I got into teaching businesses about social media, a lot of people would start to ask me what else it is that I speak about. And in typically entrepreneurial answers, I was like, of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I talk about, you know? So I kind of created as and when. So I got into public speaking, but what started to happen was I would realize how futile the whole process was. And it dawned on me that we are starting to live in a time where change is exponential, but our education and our growth is linear. And the old methodology that we used to use, things like one-day training workshops, bring in a public speaker, it's dead. Because someone comes in and talks to you today, and what happens next week, there's no longevity to it.
Yeah.
And so Suits and Sneakers really came about on the back of having a deep look at not only education in schools and universities, but how training and development takes place in the workplace, realizing that it's woefully broken, and deciding to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I started Suits and Sneakers 18 months ago, and here we are now.
That's great. I've personally been to some of your events, and I've been blown away. Event by event, it just gets bigger and bigger, the amounts of people that attend. And you've worked with like some great speakers like Carl Fussman, Tony Leon, and Dusty Rich. Isn't it intimidating sharing a stage with those type of people?
You know what, when I first started Suits and Sneakers, I'll never forget the first event we ran in July 2015. We had about 1,000 people, and I was set to introduce the event. I remember walking out and my heart rate was through the roof. I honestly felt like my heart was going to just pop out. But it's something that you get used to quite quickly. Added to that, I really enjoy being up there. Without sounding narcissistic, I really enjoy being up there and introducing and creating context. I think that's one thing I'm particularly good at. So these days I don't really think about it, but I've had a lot of practice.
Yeah.
So sharing the stage with them, luckily because of what Suits and Sneakers tries to do, much similar to like TED, our topics vary from speaker to speaker, even on the night.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually competing with them to talk in their space, you know. It's not a comparison, it's kind of a mulling of them together. So I really enjoy having the guys there, and one of the things that's really helped us to grow in the last 18 months since we started was that the events are largely free.
Yeah.
So that growth is attributed to the fact that we give some kind of value first,
Yeah.
and hope to create a relationship with the people in return.
Yeah. And then previously you've discussed that you've also just launched, or you're going to launch a new hub called Impello. Do you want to just explain that? How it's going to work, the type of businesses or events that you're going to try to attract? Okay,
so about 4 or 5 years ago, I really got interested in the idea of co-working. Because being an entrepreneur first, when you start that business, that first business, it's tough. I started in 2008. I had a house at the time, and I had an upstairs bedroom, and that doubled up as my office.
Yeah.
And you know, the first day when you start, it's like really lonely and isolating. So co-working solves a lot of those issues. It allows entrepreneurs and small business owners to share amenities, share costs, and have flexible office solutions.
Yeah.
So it's been an interest of mine for quite some time. But it's really kicked on because I have a bolder vision for Suits and Sneakers. The reason I started Suits and Sneakers was twofold. I want to disrupt how training and development takes place in the workplace.
Yeah.
But I want to use the money that we generate from the products that we create for businesses to offer kids who finish their matric an alternative to university. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to get that right, you need a change in the way the model works. Because right now you have this whole thing with fees must fall. It's been going on for quite a while. And while noble, it's ludicrous. And it's because universities, school teachers, etc., cost money. So I think the future of education is a blend of classroom style learning, where you do go to some kind of hub physically, because that's where learning really is accelerated. Learning when you're in around your peers is social, it's emotional, and it has accountability. But it doesn't scale very well. And so we are also trying to build this online university. And so if we create co-working spaces, call it 50 or 100 around the country, that already generate revenue by offering entrepreneurs some kind of service, we can double up those co-working spaces to be campuses that we offer free education from. So that's the bigger plan for me, is the idea that by creating a co-working space, it can be self-perpetuating, and then we can use the training rooms, the event rooms, the etc., to offer free events without it costing us money, so to speak. That's how it kind of comes in together.
Oh, that's great to hear. And then also another thing is South Africa is like very entrepreneurial. You know the saying that the South Africa entrepreneur sector is it's buzzing. Like a lot of the guys want to start a business, but there are some pitfalls, there are some obstacles that some overcome. In your entrepreneurial journey, what's been the biggest pitfall and what's been the biggest learning point that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome that?
You're spot on right that entrepreneurship as a whole is a buzzword right now, and everybody's jumping on it, and I can understand why. There's a few reasons why entrepreneurship is on the right side of the curve. First of all, technology is allowing entrepreneurs to do things and to have reach that they never had 20, 30 years ago. So it's really accelerating what an entrepreneur can do. On the flip side, what you have is big businesses are starting to use that same technology to wring out efficiencies. And so you'll find that workforces will slowly but surely decrease, in my opinion. But at the same time, it'll allow people like you and I to do some really interesting things that we couldn't do before. So I understand why entrepreneurship is such a big thing. And also, there's this thing where people really want to go onto their, in their own, they want to have their own time, make their own money. It's all valuable. But I also think that people don't understand what goes into entrepreneurship. And I don't want to sound like that old hardy cat, on the other side of the hill now, kind of telling people off. But it's getting tougher and tougher. It's never been easier to be an entrepreneur, and it's never been more difficult to be an entrepreneur. You have access to more, but because it's more commoditized and more people are becoming entrepreneurs. And then to add to that, you've got the other side, which is selling and marketing is changing dramatically. A long time ago, you were just able to get people's attention, and if you got that right, you could sell. So that's why advertising worked. About 15 years ago, that shifted a little bit to you needed people's attention and to create some time to unpack what it is that you sell. And these days, I find that you need people's attention and then their time to offer them an experience, because people are buying off the back of experiences. So the whole process is getting highly technical. What have I learned? I think that process, there's no question about it. Most entrepreneurs, when they start, they don't have their ducks in a row. So things like accounting is a mess for most people. Simple processes, they don't understand how to scale. So those are things that really people have to get on. But my best piece of advice on the flip side is that I was reading a book in December, and it said social capital is as real as physical capital. And I think that's the game changer. The sooner you can create meaningful relationships, get out there. You have to be the kind of person that works 24/7 to build these relationships. Because effectively, entrepreneurship is like starting something from nothing. And that's the magic and the mystery of entrepreneurship. Some people are able to get it right because they just understand how to create that energy to kickstart it. So I've run all over the loop, but I mean, it's a fabulous thing to be doing when it's going, but good God, it's pressure filled.
And then bring it back to the South African context again. What opportunities do you think South African entrepreneurs, and what threats do you think South African entrepreneurs have when compared to like first world countries, and where will that put them instead with the rest of the world? Like what will make them stand out when comparing to entrepreneurs from the States, from Australia, from Europe, and so on?
I think the one thing that's in our favor is that we are still a third world developing country. There's no question about it. And in South Africa, we live in first world pockets of a third world country. You sometimes forget that. So there's lots of opportunity that comes from that. And I always say that the bigger the problem that a country faces, the more money there is to make for the person who solves that problem.
Yeah.
So we're lucky in that regard that we still have lots of opportunities, new gaps opening up. And thanks to exponential technology, these gaps are opening up all the time. If you just think pre-2008, no one was making money off apps because app worlds didn't exist.
Yeah.
Fast forward 10 years ago, this whole world, you could never have pictured the world that opened up thanks to, say, apps.
Yeah.
And with other exponential technologies coming on board, I think new worlds are going to open up dramatically.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I think our proximity or our lack of proximity to the rest of the world does hurt us at times.
Okay.
You know, because sometimes, I know personally, trying to get big name speakers to come to the country, it's difficult because they have to fly from the other side of the world. Or so we've got a long way to go to be taken really seriously. But this is a double-edged sword. I think that largely I'm super positive about the opportunities that are in South Africa. And I'm not just saying that for a camera. I really am excited. I think there's lots to do.
Yeah.
But we do need a wake-up call across the board. We need people to realize that we need to work together, and it's not as easy as it looks. Yeah.
And what industries do you foresee becoming really big industries in South Africa? You mentioned the apps. What other areas do you think people are going to start latching onto when it comes to starting their own businesses?
Yeah, so if you look at all the exponential technologies that are out there right now, nanotechnology, robotics, things like AR and VR.
Yeah.
Again, those are industries that create whole new worlds. So in my specific industry, if you take education, we're trying to build an online university, but what happens when virtual reality becomes a real viable technology, where suddenly you can put on these goggles and these earphones and you are immersed in a classroom-like situation with other people. What does that do, you know? But I think that these kinds of technologies, certainly the medical field is going to change dramatically thanks to technology.
Yeah.
With the advent of free communication, I think you're going to see the world change. We've seen how much, for example, social media has changed the world because it's given everybody a little microphone that they never had before.
Yeah.
And yet in South Africa, we've only got, 20-30% of the country connected to the internet.
Yeah.
So there's a guy called Peter Diamandis in the States. He talks about the rising billion, largely in Africa. What happens when 6-7 million people suddenly come online?
Yeah.
What opportunities does that open? Because effectively, the more they can communicate and the quicker they can communicate with each other, the quicker those democracies can develop.
Yeah.
So what I do know, without taking super stabs at it, I do know that if you plotted where we are in the world and our growth from linear to exponential, we are just on that curve.
Yeah.
And we are, only 1 or 2% of the world has been digitized. So I think you're going to see things that we can't even begin to imagine.
Like an explosion almost.
An explosion in the next 10, even less, self-driving cars. Think about how that changes the world. We seem to think that that's far away. That's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just consider that we're on that curve and that it only starts going up like this, I wouldn't even want to take stabs at what's going to change, but I know everything's going to change.
Yeah. And then we asked this to all the entrepreneurs here. What's your 5 tips for up-and-coming entrepreneurs, kids who are still in school, want to be entrepreneurs, guys who maybe want to quit their day jobs? What 5 tips, they can be short or long, would you give to these guys if you were sitting with them right now?
One, I think number one, and I'm biased, is that your education is your own responsibility. I don't think you should be looking to the schooling system, the university system, to go far. It's not to say you shouldn't study. In fact, totally the opposite, study. But just, I think that the formal education system is not the saving grace it once was. So the number one priority I think that anybody who wants to become an entrepreneur should have is self-education every day. Understanding that reading, listening to podcasts, watching videos, and just researching the hell out of whatever it is that you do is vital. 2, I don't think that, certainly not yet, I don't think that people should be flipping over to become entrepreneurs for the sake of it. I think you should find something that you're really passionate about or really believe there's a gap. Trying to do a ton of things at once and take it from someone who tried is actually counterproductive. So your focus is vital. I would say that's 2. 3, I would do everything in my power to get a mentor. A lot of times when you interview other entrepreneurs and find out how this came about, sometimes it's luck. Someone comes into your life. It's awesome. it works for you. But I think it's your responsibility to find people, multiple people, and hold on to them for dear life. Don't give them an option.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm sorry for all
like
the
a prisoner type of thing.
It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
There's no questions asked. And then I think just on the more esoteric side, I think that the earlier you can understand that happiness is a mixture of being grateful and having gratitude for what you have now, but still planning for the future. The sooner you get your attitude right. The thing with entrepreneurship is it's based on free market principles. If your attitude is rubbish, you get found out really, really quick.
Yeah.
Because the free market speaks. So you really have to examine that. And then fifth, without sounding like that guy, you got to have fun. You just got to, if it's all, I spent so much of my 20s being so serious about work. And what's happened in my early 30s is just the dawn of enjoying every part of the process and having fun every part of the day. Instead of being so future facing, enjoying it now and looking forward. So yeah, number one, I think, is education, because this world is going to change again so dramatically. And we as human beings, we are linear creatures living in an exponentially changing world.
Yeah.
It's just so disorientating for most of us. If you don't educate yourself every day, you're in trouble.
And then finally, you can give a go. It's like, just to explain the Suits and Sneakers fixed events. Anything else you're working on right now that you'd like other guys to know about? It's your stage now.
So Suits and Sneakers, if I break it down into three parts, we have a main event, what we call the main event, twice a year. It's a free event. It's 3 or 4 speakers. It's not like TED. And like I said, it's free. We have about 3,000 people who join on average. We've hit our limit there. 3,000 people seems to be about the maximum number you can have while still keeping it intimate, if there is such a thing. So I really want to encourage people just to kind of come to that. I think that that's valuable. The fixed events happen every week, typically on a Wednesday night. And every week the topic changes. We call them Suits and Sneakers fixed because they're smaller events, one speaker fixed on one type of topic. And again, free, because a main event twice a year isn't going to fix anything. It just creates a bit of awareness. But we've recently launched something that I'm really excited about called the Real Life MBA. And the idea is that it's a conference, it's a paid for conference. We do need to generate some kind of revenue to keep growing. So the idea is that it's a full 1-day conference, but let's say each time slot is an hour long. So 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is a time slot, 9 to 10 is a time slot. And with each time slot in the day, you have 6 different speakers to choose from, and each speaker speaks to a different theme. One will speak entrepreneurship, then leadership, then marketing and finance, marketing and advertising, then finance, then innovation, and then abstract. Anything that doesn't fit into the first 5. So you kind of get there at 8 a.m. and you have to pick one of the 6 speakers that you want to watch. And you in turn are building your own curriculum for the day. And then at 9 a.m. you have to pick one of the 6 speakers. So you go like that throughout the day. But all the talks are recorded and placed online afterwards, so you actually technically miss nothing. That is something that I'm really excited about, because I just think the conference model in itself hasn't evolved much in the last, 20, 30 years. And that model, the Real Life MBA, is going to allow us to bring out the real big name speakers that I want to, because I want to expose South Africans to not only local guys, which I think is important, but the best of the best from around the world. We suffer from a thing called South Africanism, which is my final point, which is that we always think that what we have isn't good enough. But I totally disagree. So this is my attempt at kind of fixing that. So there's lots to Suits and Sneakers, but you can attend a big event twice a year for free, a smaller event each week for free, and then there are some paid things that I think are worth paying for.
And then you mentioned that you want to bring in some big name speakers. Which speakers are you aiming at getting? Are there any like on a short list that you're gunning for?
So let me be very clear. This is just a short list. Nothing is confirmed, because you don't want to get yourself into trouble by saying people are coming when they're not. We're attempting to bring Tim Ferriss out in May 2017, and the real biggie is that we're busy speaking to Simon Sinek's people to bring him out in August. But both of these aren't confirmed. They're just discussions.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it. And this was Mark Sham. Do you want to just give your website or any contact details if guys want to get hold of you?
I would say we've moved beyond websites these days. The best thing to do is just go follow us on Facebook or on Twitter. It's easy to find us, Suits and Sneakers on Facebook, and on Twitter at Suits Sneakers. Really easy. We're super active on those channels, and that's how we keep in touch.
Great, and there was another Epitomic Entrepreneurs broadcast, and thanks a lot. And once again, it was brought to you by MoneyWeb TV. Thanks.